Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of GLP's 10 out of 10. And today we have with us lighting designer Jeff Ravitz. Jeff graduated from Northwestern University's theatre department in Illinois, but soon got pulled towards live music. Combining his theatrical education background with his live music passion, Jeff soon began forging a career working with bands such as Styx, Yes, and Steely Dan. It wasn't long after that Jeff got offered the lighting designer role on Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA tour, kickstarting a creative collaboration that continues to this day. Along the way, Jeff found himself getting more and more involved with television lighting, initially with his own shows, but then also in a slightly unique role where he's able to adapt the lighting of other designers' live concerts to make them work for camera. Additionally, Jeff also consults on feature films and commercials and is a sought-after speaker. With all of this, his list of credits is extensive and includes music acts from every genre: comedy specials, award shows, concert tours, television shows, Olympic medal ceremonies, one-off events, music festivals, a Broadway run, and much more besides. His IMDb listing is just astonishing. Jeff has won multiple awards for his work, including being named Performance Magazine's Lighting Designer of the Year, the Parnelli Lighting Designer of the Year, along with multiple Aurora Awards, Telly Awards, Regional Emmy Awards, and a Primetime Emmy Award. Welcome, Jeff Ravitz.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Wow.
It is absolutely astonishing, the body of work that you've got behind you now. It's fascinating. As I mentioned, the IMDb listing, goes back to some of the early stuff in your career, and it's
I mean, kind of amazing to think about, but I guess if you live long enough and if you persevere in this business, you can get a long list of credits.
You're right. Yeah. No, it's fantastic. And I guess the breadth of everything as well, with like I say, musical genres, it's everybody from, Cher to the latest rap artists, and everything in between. And then all of the comedy work that you've done and award shows and everything. So it's, just incredible.
I like it. One thing feeds into another. You learn something from this genre and you apply it to the next discipline. It's an ongoing process and a lot of fun.
Yeah, I guess that's the other thing as well. Keeping it fun and keeping it enjoyable to go from one project to the next
Totally.
Fantastic. Okay, so we've got our 10 questions for you that we're ready to go with. So I think this is going to be great. So if we wind back to the in the beginning of your career, what was your first show as a designer?
Well, when I got out of school, aside from some local theater projects in the Chicago area, I was reading a local arts magazine one day, and there was an ad in the back looking for a lighting designer for a national recording group. I had no idea who it was. I went in, I actually had to fill out an application, and it was a Chicago artist named Bill Quaitman, a very talented guy, had a record deal on Columbia Records, and that was a pretty big deal in those days. I mean, that was how Dylan started, and Bruce Springsteen. Having that record deal under his belt was a substantial thing, and he was getting ready to tour behind the album all over the country, mostly in the Midwest, and then branching out as the album gained some traction.
Okay.
I was hired to work for him, use house systems. I actually owned about 10 lights and Licos and Fresnels, and went into these venues. I was, kind of jack of all trades, set up the keyboards, set up the drums, drove, and did the lighting. And I thought, when I was hired, I had never done anything like this. This was very much in the beginning of the sort of concert lighting and concert production industry. Most concerts really didn't have much production at all, unless maybe the Rolling Stones.
Right.
So I was kind of at a loss to know what to do, but I had seen a Grateful Dead show in the area just a few weeks before I got this job. And it was such a life-changing experience, because everything that you're taught in theater school is the lights must not be noticed. They must be integrated into the show. They're there to serve the storyline. And this was completely the opposite. I mean, these lights were out front. The band wasn't really doing much on stage. The lighting was doing everything other than the fabulous music. But you know what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
They kind of stood there fairly static, and the lights were doing amazing things. And it was just Pars and Licos. And Pars, I think, were fairly new at that time anyway, to really date myself. Like when a par can is a cutting edge technology, you have to wonder, how far back are we going here?
It's don't notice any gray hairs yet, though.
No, thank you. Anyway, so that's who I worked for, and I just thought, what am I going to do? I kind of applied standard sort of theater mentality to it. Realized by having seen that Grateful Dead show that there was a lot more that you could do. You could really sort of depart from, the old lessons and really start playing around with, accenting the music and saturated lighting. And I mean, this lighting at that Grateful Dead show was like tangible. And that's what I wanted to do too. And so that's sort of what got me off, and that got me into a kind of a stream of networking, because Bill was opening for some big artists and he was headlining himself, in smaller situations. But I was doing a little bit of everything, working with house systems, working with my own lights. I had some hardware store lights, a homemade dimmer board that I made out of household dimmers. That's kind of what it was like in those days. So It's been an interesting journey since then.
I bet. Yeah, absolutely. From that early day, setting it up in your garage, and then to where we are now. Absolutely incredible. Fantastic. Well, I'm sure that segueing into our second question, all of those shows that you've done over this extensive career so far, that I'm sure most of them gone absolutely smoothly, and there's never been any issues at all. But perhaps there's been a couple of sort of Spinal Tap moments where things didn't quite go right.
We could probably do an entire show, an entire day or month with all the calamities and things that have happened. I mean, some of them really not all that big. I used to have a habit of working on shows that weren't particularly well rehearsed, and feeling a moment in the show where you just sort of call out a cue to your programmer and say, give this a try. And of course, the song takes a left turn, the cue took a right turn. So there's tons of that. But one in particular that really, really hurt. There's no other word to use.
Right.
I was designing a comedy show for Martin Lawrence. I think it was a Showtime special. And working for a producer that I'd been trying to get in with for a long time. And somebody on the production staff had an idea that when the comedian walked out, he should be backlit in a barrage of floor lights, no front light, just sort of that, heavy duty backlight look with lots of fog. I thought, okay, great. We set it up. It looked really good. Stand-in came on stage to try it, and the whole team of people and network people are standing there. And cue doesn't happen when he walks on. So the network people are kind of upset, but kind of reworked it. Everything seemed to be okay. The talent came out again. Still, the cue didn't happen as we had programmed it just a moment before.
Okay.
So they left at a huff saying, just sort of get it right. We'll do it at the show. And I practiced it for the rest of the afternoon until doors. And it looked great. And it was happening exactly perfectly. Well, of course, during the show, there's the moment. Director calls out, go with the cue. I'm in the truck surrounded by all of these suits. And not only does the cue not happen, but the entire stage and audience and everything completely blacks out to the point where we had to stop down the show, do the walk on again. They said, don't even try the cue. It turned out that the programmer was so intent on getting it right. Somehow he had brushed up against the blackout button on the console and the whole system just cut out.
Wow. Oh,
So
that's terrible. Oh, that's
it
crazy.
was brutal. I never worked for that producer again. The show looked great, I thought, but not that moment.
There was never a second phone call. Oh, that's a shame. That's
So there you go. I mean,
well,
Spinal Tap on steroids.
there we go. Keep the blackout buttons far away from the master faders. Oh. Okay. So what would you say is the best piece of advice that anyone's ever given you, either professionally or otherwise?
Well, early on when I was just beginning to touch on to working in television projects and projects for the camera, I would generally be the tour LD that the video team would come in and rework my show, for me, thank you very much. And one in particular was the Styx show that was based on their Kilroy Was Here tour. It was called Caught in the Act, but it was based on that Mr. Roboto tour that,
right.
And very, very dramatic, lots of heavy duty cueing. And there was a cinematographer that was brought in because the whole thing was done on film. This gentleman, Daniel Pearl, went over every cue with me and said something that has stuck with me, simple as it is. He just said, think about not using two lights when you can use one. And that stuck with me because we were looking at close-up shots and analyzing them. And, there were so many instances where, lights would overlap and you would overcomplicate something by using more lights than you needed. And that's something that's always been at the forefront of my mind whenever I cue a show now. Don't use two when one is sufficient.
Right. That's great advice. Great advice. Scale it back and keep everything under control.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Professionally, what would you say is your proudest achievement so far?
I've got to say it changes sort of decade by decade. Something that I might have thought was that 20 years ago is surpassed by something that I've done more recently. But I work on a lot of projects that have logistical challenges, and I like solving problems.
Okay.
There are a few shows that I've done. Maybe they're not the best looking shows that I've ever done, but they are the ones where I think I've solved some major problems and I've applied high level, standards of quality to them. So the show, in my estimation, ends up looking much better than it really had any chance of, given the logistics and the compromises. And I don't want any compromises in the look, but I may have a lot of compromises in the logistics of the show. So there was a show that I did in Brazil for a couple of years, a gigantic Christmas pageant called Glorioso, all done outdoors, long distance throws, on the steps of the Teatro Amazonas in Manaus, 200-foot wide area to light, and really not a lot of equipment to light it with. But I felt that that was a show that, with the help of a very willing vendor and pulling every light out of that entire, part of the country, would make it look excellent. But more recently, a show that I'm really proud of is the Bruce Springsteen Western Stars movie that he did just 2 years ago with an orchestra behind him that was supposed to be done in a legit theater in Asbury Park, and ended up being done in his barn on his property. Beautiful barn, but not production friendly at all.
I can imagine.
But there was a lot of emphasis put on not blocking, the architectural features of the barn, and there were a lot of people squeezed into a very small space. There was like 20 orchestra members and lots of band members around the stage, and I felt that I was able to find locations to place these lights make the right choice of fixture. And, between that and of course, Bruce's fabulous music and a really excellent programmer, we managed to pull off a show that you would not have known had the challenges that it did. And I was very proud of how that
went. Right. That's great. That's fantastic. It's awesome to know some of those stories behind what you see on the screen and how challenging it was to get it to look that good. That's fantastic.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, it seems like I get a lot of those, but I guess I thrive on it.
Right. Perhaps you've got there's a little asterisk next to your name somewhere that says challenge called Jeff. He'll take care of it. Fantastic. Now, obviously, normally you're around traveling and getting shows up and running and obviously working across the country and around the globe. But when you're not working, what do you normally do in your downtime?
Well, I cook a lot, and this has been a good opportunity the last year to learn how to make fresh pasta and do some things that I hadn't done before. Play with some new gadgets and in the kitchen. And so I've had a lot of time to, sort of hone my cooking a little bit. I love skiing. I'm an avid skier and haven't had a chance to ski, in a while. I didn't ski at all last year. And,
right.
Hope to catch a little bit before the season is over this year, just as things open up a little bit. And photography, I totally love getting out and doing travel photography, landscape photography, nature, family,
right?
Like that.
Some things that are totally away from what the normal day job is.
Completely.
Get that balance back, which is always nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Fantastic. Excellent. As we mentioned, you've traveled around the world and you've worked in some particularly challenging venues. But do you have a best venue at all?
Well, I don't know if there's like one best venue, but that Teatro Amazonas that I was mentioning in Brazil, it's an amazing venue inside and out. And we did our show mostly on the outside, and it's just beautiful. It's classic. It's was built in the 1800s when that part of the country was having a boom in rubber manufacturing. And believe it or not, they just had so much money, they built this totally crazily ornate theater in a very, very poor area of the Amazon region. But like from a practical point of view, the Auditorium Theater in Chicago is one of the best venues on the planet.
Okay.
It's got an enormous stage. It's got this, 1800s gilt ornate architecture that was designed by Louis Sullivan, who designed a lot of the famous buildings in Chicago. And a great fly system. I mean, you can do anything from a practical point of view. It's got fabulous lighting positions.
Right.
It's got all of this, classic beauty as well. And they say it's got perfect acoustics. I know the Chicago Symphony plays there a lot, and they do a lot of classical, but they do all kinds of productions in there. And it's a joy to work in that theater.
Right. You get that combination of the best technology and an artistic space that does everything justice.
Exactly. But I've got to say that although the architecture of an arena isn't really all that much to take notice of, there's something about working in an arena where you kind of create your own theater and create your own environment that I kind of love too.
Right. Yeah. Where you have that blank canvas when you walk in.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So you create your own lighting positions. And, if you've got, enough money to rig wherever you want, you can do just about anything.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Pull off a spectacular performance.
Yeah.
All right. Not obviously we've been talking a little bit, but we've been locked down at various stages and for various amounts of time. If you only had one musical artist or one musical album that you could keep with you, who would that be?
Yeah, that's a tough one because I spent a lot of time professionally listening to 4/4 music, and I try to get as far away from that as possible. I listen to a lot of jazz because it's unpredictable and it's not so repetitious as a lot of pop music is. As great as pop music is, it's extremely repetitious. Mm-hmm. But if I were to be on a desert island or quarantined for one reason or another, I'd probably take the Steely Dan album, Asia.
Okay.
I could listen to it forever and still find some twists and turns in all the weird musical variations, and the lyrics are kind of an enigma. You can listen to them hundreds of times and get different meanings from them. So it's an album I never get tired of. It's
right.
Just, fabulous. So I could probably spend some time with that one. I did over the last year. I did.
Right. Right. I mean, that's one of the things that of course we've been able to do is during this extra time is go back and do some of those things, pull the dust off of the record collection, have a listen again.
I had a pile of CDs that I had gotten over the last few years. I was on some promotional lists and just had stacks of them and just started whittling my way through, which was good. I needed the time to do that, but I just kept coming back to that one Steely Dan album.
Right. Wow. Fantastic. There we go. Excellent. Now, if you were able to go back in time and go and visit the teenage Jeff and offer one piece of advice, what would that be?
This one, I would tell myself, bigger is not necessarily better, but thinking big is good. And I would encourage myself to think big, kind of fear less, and just not be afraid to have the confidence to try anything. Because I know that I've had to push myself over the years to do that, get myself out of my comfort level. And, sometimes I've been aware of it and I've been able to kind of kick myself in the pants. And other times I haven't, and I've ended up regretting it. So I would say that. And then I think I would also say something I think about all the time on a more of a personal level is get more out of your older relatives, because they're not going to be around forever. And,
right.
Sometimes, think about people that I just can't ask any questions of anymore. And, wish I had, gotten a little more history and knew a little more about them.
Right. What's happened in the past. And I guess that's become quite obviously apparent in the last several months with the whole pandemic, that it makes you realize how fragile life is and how to embrace it. So,
yeah.
There we are. Fantastic work. Keep pushing forward. Keep going bigger. That's
yeah. It applies at any time in your life.
Yes, that's true. There we are. Now, if you were able to sit down for a cup of coffee with any one person at all, either living or past, who would that be?
Well, so I was saying, push yourself to, squeeze more out of your relatives. I lost my dad when I was a kid, and so I would choose him as somebody that I would love to know more about what his dreams were, because I was too young to really probe into those things when he was still in my life. So I would do that, and kind of bring him up to date on me and see what he would think. So that would be an important person that I would pull out of the past. And if I were to pull somebody out, kind of on a professional basis, I think about all the great artists and cinematographers and everybody, but I would love to spend some time with some of the teachers that were really influential to me early on in my life and in my education, where I don't think I knew enough at that time to really get everything out of them that I could have. And some of them, I whether they know it or not, I kind of model myself after them. And I would love to sort of have a recap with them and maybe, you know, a review and go over all of that stuff, you know, one more time with me as I am today, understanding a bit more than I did back then.
Right. That's a phenomenal answer. That's brilliant, actually. Yeah, to be able to go back and do that. And yeah, I guess what part of the message is that you're never too old to keep learning and to keep finding new things.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I found that to be the case literally every day in every production I work on.
Right. Yeah. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Every pasta I make.
Brilliant responses on both counts. Absolutely. There we go. And so we get to our final question as well. Now, I know obviously through some of your work, you're familiar with the Olympics, but once we finish the interview, you're going to get a call from Team USA, and they're going to call you up to compete for your country. The question is, it could be for the Summer Games or for the Winter Games, but what's the sport that they would call you up for? What would you like to have a go at?
Well, I don't know how happy they'd be to have me on the team, but I would go for giant slalom.
Okay.
I would be downhill skiing as fast as I can go. I don't think I could do the moguls. You know, it's but the slalom, it's poetry in motion. I love skiing. I love that speed, and I would love to be, you know, hearing that countdown and come out the gate.
Bursting through the gate. Would you say you're a bit of an adrenaline junkie then?
I am. There's something about it. You know, I mean, there's no real reason why I should be, but you know, I would race cars and fly planes and do all of that stuff, you know, if I could. But I mean, none of that is realistic for me. But you know, it just seems a little too far out there. But I love the idea. But you know, I love that moment where you're just lifting off in a plane where it gets super, super fast, and then suddenly you feel the ground separate from the plane. Yeah. And I love that. So skiing, I love, and I could never do giant slalom the way the pros do it, but I'd give it a try.
Give it a shot. There we go.
One last time.
Right. Strap on those bits of wood and let's go. Right.
Yeah,
see if we can make it to the bottom.
Yeah.
That's absolutely perfect. That's perfect. I'm sure you'd make it down. There we go.
One way or another.
One way or another. Exactly. With help or not. Yeah. This has been fantastic, Jeff. Thank you so much for finding some time for this. We really appreciate it. There've been some absolutely fantastic answers. They really have. So yeah, brilliant.
Really honored to be here. Thanks. I'm really pleased.
Pleasure. Well, obviously, we look forward to meeting up in person when the opportunity comes around again. But in the meantime, yeah, thanks again. Stay safe, and yeah, we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Mark.
Bye.
Bye-bye.